Hello, my name is Carson Kirchner, and this is the first article review for Psychology of Music. The article I chose to study was Perception and Familiarity of Diatonic Modes by Daphne Tan and David Temperley from the Music Perception Journal. The study that's followed in this article is a follow-up study that Daphne Tan and David Temperley had conducted in 2013, in which they sought to determine the relationship of perceived happiness to different diatonic modes. This previous study found that perceived happiness decreased as the scale steps were lowered. This led them to question whether or not these results are a reflection of the familiarity of the diatonic modes. The current study focuses on the impact of familiarity on diatonic modes and whether listeners without any musical formal training can quickly orient themselves to modal framework. Within the study, they constructed melodies made using 4 pairs of modes, all with the tonal center of C. These pairings are Ionian and Lydian, Mixolydian and Ionian, Dorian and Aeolian, and Aeolian and Phrygian. Context modes and ending modes were varied for each melody. The first 3 measures of each melody was considered a context mode, and the last measure was an ending mode. These participants were asked to rate how well the ending mode fit the context mode. Within the study, the questions they had were if listeners gave higher ratings to some modes as endings overall, and will listeners give a higher rating to the ending if the mode matches the context mode. Within the study, they pulled students from University of Rochester and Indiana University, and they sought to find students that were not music majors and had little to no musical experience or knowledge. They divided the participants into 2 groups. One group would listen to the Mixolydian and Ionian and Dorian and Aeolian pairings, and then the other would listen to Ionian, Lydian, and Aeolian Phrygian. They listened to diatonic melodies with a 3-measure context mode in either X or Y, followed by a 1-measure ending in mode X or Y. Each participant heard all 8 trials in random order, and they completed both mode pairings for the groups that they were in. When the last measure began to play, the word ending appeared on the computer screen to indicate that this was the last measure. The results of this study found that listeners rated an ending higher if the mode matched the context mode. Listeners without any formal training or knowledge of diatonic modes are able to internalize diatonic modal frameworks, and it also showed that there is a significant interaction between ending mode and context mode, and there was also a large effect of the ending mode on whether or not they thought a mode fit. Overall, Ionian and Aeolian modes were suggested to be the most familiar to listeners, and this is based off of the findings that these modes received the highest ratings of endings among all conditions and experiments. In conclusion, the interaction between context and ending modes provided evidence that listeners without any formal musical knowledge can quickly orient themselves to a modal framework and understanding. The highest rated modes, aligns Aeolian and Aeolian, shows a pattern of familiarity of diatonic modes that are used in popular modern music. Perception of mode ending fitting the context is associated with familiarity and personal experience. The study showed that listeners perceive certain diatonic modes as more favorable based on previous exposure and familiarity. Thank you for listening.